Hey, welcome back. Doing another video on the Galaxy Z Fold 2. I did the unboxing last time. This time, I'm going to be doing a video on emulation on this device, specifically DS emulation on this device. So I have my nifty little setup here. I have my 8-bit Do SN30 Pro, which I'm going to be using to actually control the games. And the emulator specifically I'm using is called Super NDS. Super NDS. It comes in two versions. There's a free and there's a pro. The pro costs $3. I bought the pro because I was getting tired of the ads on the free one. Just a spoiler alert as I talk about it. There's a ton of ads if you go for the free one. But let's jump into this. So when you first launch the emulator, the first thing you see, which I really liked, was a emulator launch screen where it shows you what it automatically scans your storage and tells you what games you have on here already. Which right now all I have is Super Mario 64 DS and Super Princess Peach. I think actually I just finished downloading Pokemon. No Pokemon. So I guess it didn't finish downloading. Whatever, I'll figure that out later. But right now I have Super Mario 64 DS and Super Princess Peach, which I'm going to use to showcase the emulator. If you just want to jump right, so this is the first thing you see, and you just click and just jump right into a game. Awesome. Cool way to get in and just start playing immediately. And actually you can see right now the touch controls it has. So this emulator does have touch controls. It can be controlled fully with the touchscreen. But I will say that with how many buttons this has and the kind of games you're going to play on it, it's very hard to play via the touchscreen, which is why I have this SN30 Pro here, which connects via Bluetooth. Let's jump into the settings real fast before we start getting into gameplay. So this emulator actually has a lot of settings which I really liked. It gets into a lot of little things. So one, you can of course play around with the language that's going to show up on the ROMs and within the actual software itself. You can play around with the execution engine, basically, which just allows you to switch between how it interprets the ROMs. Certain ROMs may play better on certain engines. I like that it actually has autosave, so if you are playing a game and there's a chance it may crash, it automatically saves everything to a save state, so that way you can just jump right back in. You could turn off that ROM browser thing that scanned, but I liked it. I thought it was neat being able to jump right into it, finding everything instead of having to organize it on your device. You could again play around with frame skipping, screen filtering, the 3D render engine, so you can actually get basically if certain games have a hard time running on certain engines or without a certain amount of frame skips, you can change that kind of stuff. I'm gonna keep show FPS on. It does have the ability to show the frames because I want to show how the games perform. You can swap the touchscreen and the main LCD. So basically, if you want to have the main LCD on the bottom and the touchscreen at the top, you can do that. Yeah, we can stop it from rotating. Maintain aspect ratio. You can stretch it just to show you what it looks like if you actually stretch it. It actually fills the entire screen. It actually doesn't look too bad, but knowing myself, I prefer keeping everything right at the aspect ratio it was intended to be played at. To me, it just looks better. And you could also, let's say you don't want to have the bottom screen because you don't plan on using the touchscreen at all, or the game that you're playing doesn't even need the touchscreen, you can set it to only show the main screen, just to show that again. So if you're like, hey, I just need the main screen, it actually just fills up as much space it can with the single screen. But a lot of DS games, I feel like, actually need the touchscreen, or at least the ones I'm going to play, so I will keep both of those on. Of course, you can enable sound or disable sound. The cool thing is you can actually use the microphone on your device as if it was the microphone that was built in the DS. I just really like that. So you can actually get into the controller layout. So if you're like, hey, I want to change the layout of where the touch controls are, you can do that. But I will be honest, I am going to use this mostly with controls off. So I'm going to turn that off right now since I'm going to be using the controller here anyways. Haptic feedback, that's very important so you can feel the rumble. Always allow touch is basically what allows you to use your touchscreen on your device as the touchscreen on the DS, which is again crucial to running a lot of games on the DS. And you can even change the transparency of the buttons. So if you feel like, oh man, I want to keep them on the screen just in case I want to use them, but I don't want them to be visible, you can't do that. But I've just disabled them. I'd rather not have the buttons on the screen at all. Let's jump into the gameplay. So we're gonna start with Mario 64. Let me pull this front and center. Actually, yeah, I'll pull it front and center just because Mario 64 is one of my favorite games of all time, so I definitely always want to try that out on this device. So this is going to immediately show you how the touchscreen works on this, because you actually need a touch adventure to get the game started. You cannot use buttons to get this game started. From here on out, I'm actually controlling this with, sorry you can't see, but with my controller. So I'm not going to keep that on the screen, but this controller is what I'll be using. So the ROMs actually run pretty well. Of course, I'm running like a day one launch game for the DS, which of course it should be able to run, but they run pretty well. As you can see above, it's maintaining 60 frames per second. Even as I go into a level, you'll see it doesn't really drop frames. I didn't see many frame drops when I was playing. I kind of tested it before. I already have 4 stars, as you can see. One thing that was surprising is how well the audio. I know you can't hear it because unfortunately my mic's going to cancel out the audio, but the audio translated really well on this emulator. It sounds extremely good. I'm just going to rush to where the star is. I actually think this is the one where I had to talk to this bad boy. So my favorite game of all time is this is just inside information. My favorite game of all time is actually the original Mario 64, not this here. But you know, this is the version you get on the DS, so why not? Yep. But I just want to show you guys that this maintains a solid 60 FPS the whole time through, even when interacting with the enemies, taking damage there. You see it doesn't drop any frames. And this is just all on the default settings initially in the ROM. I haven't changed anything outside of I don't want to see the buttons on the controller. No, the buttons on the touchscreen, sorry. Yeah, and actually, instead of keeping on playing, let me show you what it looks like in landscape. This is probably the one thing I didn't like. So in landscape mode, what it does is it rotates and puts the screen side by side instead of top and bottom. I personally wasn't a big fan of that. I would much rather these screens be top and bottom, even rotated in landscape mode. And from what I saw in the settings, there was no way to flip this. It was just stuck like this. So that's probably the one thing I didn't like about this emulator. But otherwise, when it's in portrait mode, to me it looks fantastic because you really get that feel of a DS, and you get the screens in their full size, large glory. So just a quick just information on how I feel about the ROM. I feel like it runs the games well. I definitely recommend Super NDS, the emulator, and I definitely recommend playing for the Pro because, man, the free one played an ad every time you entered and exited the settings, and it was like a 30-second ad. I hated that. It was unbearable. But yeah, I'm going to leave it here. Basically, the emulation works very well. It's very fast. The emulator is pretty good, and it just looks fantastic on this device. I'm just going to go back to Mario 64 and just finish out, just make the last few minutes of this video just pure gameplay. None of my annoying voice. So enjoy the rest of this just gameplay. I'm going to have it up on the right with the phone to the left. But the rest of this, I'm just going to let play. Alright, that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed that gameplay and the view of emulation on the Galaxy Z Fold 2. It's actually a pretty cool phone, has a lot of power, can do a lot of emulation. I just want to show off the 3DS emulator. I'm definitely going to be back with some GameCube, N64, potentially some Dreamcast and PlayStation emulation on this device, so please stay tuned and comment below if there's any other devices you'd like to see emulated before the others. So like if you want to see N64 first, just let me know and I'll bring that first. Otherwise, have a nice day, guys.